Join us today, Ramon Perez, Executive Director of Digital Democracy Project. Let's go.
Ever wish you could tell your legislators exactly how to vote? Well, now you can. And it's right in the palm of your hands. Introducing the Digital Democracy Project, a mobile voting app and online tracking system, connecting you to the process, giving you the power. You vote on pending bills, on issues that affect us all, every day, telling legislators how you want them to vote. There's no party politics, no big money, and no special interests. We only compare what voters want to what legislators actually deliver, and everybody can see it. Your representatives, the media, everybody, all from your phone. Plus, it's absolutely free. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. You vote on the same bills as your representatives. We track it online in real time, a running tally. Then we take score. We add up every vote on every issue and we post it. You can see if they have voted with or against the majority. And come election time, now you know the score. It's powered by blockchain technology, keeping you secure. And with ID verification, it guarantees that all votes are real votes by real human voters. And don't worry, we never store, share, or monetize your data. And we never will. We're just putting the power where it belongs, right in your hands. So join us. We have the technology. You have the power. The Digital Democracy Project. This is what democracy looks like.
All right. We'd like to welcome Ramon Perez, Executive Director of the Digital Democracy Project. How are you, sir?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you talking to me today.
Excellent, excellent. Let me put you in the right spot there. There we go. All right. We're very appreciative that you are taking time out of your busy day to join us. I'll just jump right into it. You have a background in technology, AI. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. So I was an engineering student in college during 9/11, and I joined the military as a result of 9/11. I decided I wanted to, instead of designing airplane engines, which was what I originally wanted to do, my entire focus shifted. I went into the military. I served um, on active duty for several years, and did that for a couple tours, Iraq, Afghanistan, did some tour on the Korean Peninsula, etc. And that was the first time I was really exposed to working with big data, I guess you could say, because I was an intelligence officer, and so a lot of it was trying to identify, find terrorists, and bring them to justice. And a lot that was the first time I really experienced using big data as a tool for that. So it got me interested in the concept. Um, I went, I left active duty, went back to graduate school, and out of graduate school, one of my professors um, worked basically is now the CEO of a company that I work for. He was in the AI machine learning business, and this was about 10 years ago. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years, and didn't even really know what AI, machine learning, that kind of stuff was at the time in 2014. But he recruited me, and it's been fantastic. I've learned a ton, and I've gotten introduced to a lot of people in the technology landscape as a result of that, including people who work in blockchain. I got introduced to Nimit Sawhney, the CEO of Votes. Votes is a really innovative election software built on blockchain. It's a mobile voting software. They got started in 2016. I got introduced to them, and they've been running real elections where people could vote by phone, mostly for military voters overseas who were trying to cast a ballot, really struggled to get an absentee ballot through the mail. So I resonated with that right away. I mean, immediately it was like, oh, this is perfect, because I've been in this situation of trying to vote while deployed, and it's tough. It's really, really tough. You have to mail in your absentee ballot like over a month in advance, and sometimes the person you vote for, if it's a primary, I had more than one time that person dropped out by the time my ballot got through the mail. So, I mean, I hated that experience, and I loved the technology they were building. And I said, well, wait a minute, if you can let people vote by phone, and you can do it in a way that's secure, so that you are doing, device level encryption and two-factor authentication and biometrics, and then you got the whole blockchain backend, and so there's no way to manipulate or some foreign actor come in and manipulate the results. And I said, well, if you could do all this securely, then really, why should we have to wait every 4 years for people to have a say in their government? Why can't we just let people weigh in whenever they want, wherever they want, on any particular topic that they're interested in? And so that was the concept of Digital Democracy Project was born in about 2021. So we've been at it now for about 3 years, taking advantage of the technology that Votes has built, but then using it in a different way, because we're not elections administrators. We're not running for the state of Florida. We're not running an election, which is what the technology is built for. But we're a nonprofit organization. We're saying, well, what if we gather up all the data about all the bills that are being voted on in Tallahassee and in Washington, and we let people weigh in real time as these bills are moving through the committee system? They could be letting their legislators know how they want them to vote on these bills live in advance of a floor vote. So instead of just being angry with your legislator after the fact, what if you could have a say in the process and influence your legislators to vote the way you want them to vote? But then also the brilliant power of data here is that we can then take what the voters wanted in the app and compare to how the legislators voted on the floor on the same bill during the session. And so we can produce a scorecard for every legislator to show how often do they vote with the will of the people based on how the people are voting in the apps. So that's the basic concept of Digital Democracy Project. And we launched it about 18 months ago. So prior to the 2023 Florida session. And we were just starting with Florida legislation as our prototype. And then we just this year added on. So we did the second Florida session, 2024 session. And then this year we added on U.S. congressional, so that so Floridians at least could vote on the same bills as their legislators in Congress. We get the voter file from the state, so we can validate everyone is a registered voter, so a citizen of the United States, a resident of Florida, right? We want to know that these are real people, that they're not bots, they're not foreign actors. We use the same level of security as running a real election. We're just doing it for a different purpose.
Oh, wow. That is fascinating. I mean, talk about participatory, democracy. That's fascinating. And before I go further, I want to thank Sadie for helping bring this all together, this particular interview. She presented in front of one of the civic organizations that we're a part of, called Orange County Watch, and it was a great opportunity to present to our membership. And they had some questions, especially about security, about how many times people can vote or give their opinion about a particular bill, and the scoring process. Joel, did you have anything you wanted to? Not yet. Okay, great. So, Ramon, in regards to the, I'm so fascinated about the blockchain technology. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But in regards to some of the concerns that were brought up during that County Watch meeting, particularly by the conservatives in the group, about the security, you talked about that. How do you put that into layman terms for a crowd like the one we had at County Watch?
Right. I mean, the simplest way is to say that this is real election software that we're using. This is not a Twitter poll.
Mhm.
You know, it is a high barrier to entry because you do have to be a registered Florida voter. We have to find you on the voter file, and we have to. We also use photo ID matching, so you do a selfie scan and an image of your driver's license. Then it gets checked against the DMV record to make sure that that's actually in the DMV records. So because we're using real election software, we're following the same process the state of Florida uses when you vote at a polling site. It's just doing it using mobile election technology. And so, like I
Sure.
said, this was originally built for military voters overseas, but several states that are using it are actually conservative states because they wanted to better serve military voters. So West Virginia was the first state to pilot this software back in 2016. Utah, Arizona, um, they've expanded into Oregon, Colorado. I think the city of Denver actually ran their elections on this a couple years ago. Massachusetts. So it's really not partisan in nature. It's a it's a way to balance, I think, the needs that conservatives have rightly expressed around how do you make sure that the system is secure, that you are matching
Right.
someone's identity against the voter file, and it does that. And then the concerns that Democrats or progressives have, which is how do you provide greater access to voting so that there's a lower barrier for people to vote. And I think it does that as well. It brings the voting process to somebody's home effectively. And so to try to do both of those things securely in a way that can't be tampered with, can't be manipulated by foreign actors, these types of things. That's why we partner with Votes rather than trying to just build something ourselves that could be just another online polling system. We wanted to start with a basis of security to build on top of.
Excellent. That I'm so fascinated, and this conversation is going even further than what was explained to our group at County Watch. My second question I have is in regards to the scoring itself. Again, there were concerns about too many people maybe scoring a particular legislator lower, just because that group of voters scoring the legislator may be from an opposing or an opposite um,
Right,
political affiliation. So there were
right,
concerns
right.
about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think well, for one, the last probably, the last 2 years or so, we've really been focusing on building the product so that we can connect we get provision the mobile application, but also connect the data that where we're scraping all the bills and everything from the state websites and getting the vote records, getting it all into the scorecards, like making the maps work. All of that has been a lot of the focus of the team. And so what Sadie has been doing recently is doing a lot more outreach to actually spread the word and get organizations to get their members to use this platform and be involved. And I think a lot of our early adopters um, have been probably left-leaning organizations because they have not had control in Tallahassee. So realistically, that's what I've observed is that people who feel a sense of like disenchantment with being out of power in Tallahassee have been more driven to be involved in the project. Since we've added federal legislation, I think we've seen a little bit more pickup amongst conservative groups who want to have more influence in Washington, where it's a split Congress and the White House is under the control of the Democrats. So our point of view is that we just provide the platform. It's not really up to us to have an opinion on any of this legislation. We don't take a stance on any of these things. We just want to
Correct.
provide a platform that anybody can have a say in the process. But yeah, I do think that probably the early adopters have been more left leaning, and that's why you're seeing some of those early scorecards be more left leaning. Part of the other issue too is that now that the product is really more fully built and mature, we need to scale it up. So the scorecards that we're creating right now are based on the state level vote because we don't have enough concentration in a particular district to do a district level scorecard. So our
Okay.
feeling is we will do district level scorecards, and I would expect the numbers to change quite a bit. If we get to the point where we've got much greater scale inside of a red district, you're going to see a a district level scorecard that should have, if you're conservative in a red district, you should have a very high score, because like if you're voting with the people in that district and they have a conservative point of view, and then the legislator is voting conservative, that's going to match. They should have a high score. And so part of what you're seeing with the scorecards now is that it's being driven to the mean in the state. So if you look at the U.S. congressional scorecards, you'll see that two of the congressmen from the House side, on the bottom of the scorecard list, there's like a Democrat and a Republican. And then if you look at the top of the scorecard, top of the leaderboard, I should say, the top person in the U.S. Congress is a Republican, and the next one behind him is a Democrat. And I think that partly what you're seeing is sort of the difference between more centrist Republican, centrist Democrat probably rising to the top, because we're currently producing scorecards that are at the average for the state rather than specific to that district. So my guess is that once we start doing a congressional district level scorecard, you might see somebody who is a very right-leaning Republican or a very left-leaning Democrat. I would guess that their scores would go up if they happen to be in a very, very red or very blue district. So we'll see as that goes. But in order to make that happen, we have to get scale. We need tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of voters voting in the app, so that we have a couple thousand people in a district to give us a representative sample of each district that we can use for then district level scorecards.
Right. I have two questions. One is about security. The first one, very quickly, are the constitutional amendments on the platform now?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we had not done that mainly because it felt like it's already being taken care of to a degree. It's a citizens initiative, so everybody's going to have a chance to vote on amendments 1 through 4. So they didn't necessarily need our app to have a say in that process. People have asked us about that. We could put the amendments into the app. There's no reason that we couldn't. But the only reason we hadn't was that there already is kind of a mechanism for citizens to have a say at the ballot box in November. So they didn't really need us. But the other thing is that I will be interested, especially with Amendment 4, because the exact same language for Amendment 4 was introduced in a bill in the Senate by Lori Berman this session. And we did carry that bill. So we do have some vote data from voters in the app on that fetal viability language.
Right.
So we will see how that compares to the actual Amendment 4 voting in the fall. How close were the numbers in the app versus the numbers on the Amendment 4, because the language is like literally was picked up from Amendment 4 and put into that Berman bill. So I will be curious to see, because that'll give us a sense of what's the bias level in this data, because we actually don't see how individuals vote. Because we're using real election software, it's a secret ballot. So we can't see that, David, you voted yes on a fetal viability bill and I voted no. We can't see that. All we can see is that David is a verified Florida voter who's registered to vote in Florida, and that Ramon is a Florida voter who's registered to vote in Florida. And once you have verified your identity, you vote however you vote, and we don't know how that's going to be. So we don't always completely have a sense of, what's the partisan lean on any given issue, or because we can't see how people vote on a given issue. So that is one limitation that we accept when we use a real election software, because we have the same information that an elections administrator would have. We would have whatever's on the voter file, so we could say, okay, we know who David Washington is, and we know that he's registered to vote, and we know whatever his partisan affiliation is that's on the voter file. But we can't, just like an election administrator, we can't see how he votes on the actual ballot, because that's a secret. So, so we don't go around kind of doing any statistical alchemy to try to change the results to say, well, this is a likely voter sample that we want to try to say, well, what would likely voters vote on this? We just basically let the data be the data. We let anybody participate as they choose, regardless of their political affiliation and demographic. We're not trying to kind of produce a poll. We're trying to provide a platform so that people can have a say in the process.
Great. Thank you. Cedra submitted the question in regards to security, and it says, as mentioned in the DDP video, that data is not shared. However, how is it possible that the data is not shared? If healthcare data can be stolen, then how is this secure? You've kind of touched on that. What's your stance on this?
Yeah, partly it's that we get the data. We get the data from the state. We get the voter file, right? So the voter file is shared to us by the state of Florida. We don't have the ability to see how someone votes. So that the fact that it's a secret ballot is part of the reason why we don't share the data, because we never have that.
Okay.
When you vote, your vote record gets added to the blockchain, and there is an encryption of your actual identifying information. So there's a uniquely encrypted ID, so that it's like David Washington is separated from the actual vote record. And this is kind of how blockchain works generally, how Bitcoin, the kind of mechanism behind how Bitcoin works. Even though we don't have any cryptocurrency involved in this, the
Correct.
actual blockchain itself is the same conceptual. So what that allows is that it's an immutable block store, so nobody can manipulate any of the records. Once they're on the blockchain, they're there forever.
Right.
So that third party auditors can check the tallies and make sure that there's no change in the vote tallies over the course of time, but they don't have the ability to trace it back to an individual voter. So that's how that's done. I think the difference with healthcare records is that your healthcare record is attached to your personal details. Because it's a health record, they have to know that, Ramon is the guy with atherosclerosis, not David, right? Like, if they don't know which patient they're dealing with,
Exactly.
I think that's, so we're able to sort of disentangle the actual vote record from the verified voter. The verified voter, once they're in the platform, they sort of become invisible, because it's just their vote record is added to the blockchain, and then it's a unique key at that point on, so that the tallies can be audited by the third party auditors.
Is the blockchain proprietary, or is it sitting the platform sitting on like Solantra or Ethereum? I think I got them correctly. It's been a while since I looked into blockchain, but
Yeah,
is it a proprietary blockchain
this
that
one
was
uses
created?
Hyperledger.
Okay.
It is, yeah, it's using Hyperledger. It's so it is run by vote, because it's not involved in cryptocurrency, so there's no currency aspect of financing the blockchain itself. So Votes pays for the compute power to run the blockchain on
Okay.
Hyperledger. And then what they do is that there are different nodes run by independent groups of
Correct.
auditors who separately validate um, vote records as they're put onto the blocks. So when you deal with Bitcoin or something like Ethereum, you have essentially Bitcoin miners all over the world who are validating the records onto the blockchain, and they get paid in Bitcoin to do that computing, to validate that the record was properly added to the blocks, and that there was no manipulation, and that there's like 6 different independent validations. And so that way, once it's on there, it can be trusted that that block was added properly, and that that's verified transaction. When you don't have cryptocurrency to incentivize it, and you have um, essentially votes having to pay that compute costs themselves, that's why the independent auditors have to be separate entities who
Okay.
perform their own validations on the blocks, so that no one organization has the keys to the kingdom, if you will. You would have to hack 6 different organizations in this case in order to in order to change the vote records. We've actually, as Digital Democracy Project, we've been interested in potentially becoming one of those independent auditors as well,
Okay.
of managing one of the Hyperledger nodes. But that would be something that would require some funding, and we, I think you wanted to talk about this, but we had
Yes, please.
funding lined up that got right. So we had a bipartisan funding that was supported by a senior Republican in the Senate and a junior Democrat in the House of Representatives. This is in Tallahassee, so we're talking about Florida legislation. They had successfully worked it through the budget process in the Florida Senate and the Florida House, and had been approved, and went to the governor's desk. I did a TED talk on May 30th, I think it was, and
Okay.
we announced that we had secured this bipartisan funding for this project, and very excitedly, because it's hard to get something bipartisan in Florida. It seems like, or
Very
anything to
true.
do with politics these days, right? Doing anything bipartisan. Um, and so, 2 weeks after that TED talk went live, Governor DeSantis vetoed our funding, and it's hard to know why. We don't really have any insight into this, especially when we had um, senior Republican senator who put his name on the funding appropriation. We had a senior Republican, a budget committee chair in the House, who supported it as well. Who's a very conservative guy. And like I say, though, if you're conservative in a very red district, you've got nothing to fear from hearing from voters. And I think a lot of them just saw it as a great tool to have to hear from voters before they have to go take a tough vote, right? They can't afford to poll their district every single time they want to take a vote. It's just not practical. Polling is 30 to 40 grand a pop every time you want to do it. So I think they saw it as a
Yes.
great tool for them, right, to hear from their voters in a way that's
Exactly.
validated, right? Because if people call the switchboard or people send an email, it's very hard to figure out if that person's actually in your district and not just some AstroTurf campaign. So
Correct.
the fact that we were, putting a lot of emphasis on voter verification and security was a really appealing to a lot of the conservatives in Tallahassee and Democrats who just see it as a tool. So it was a shock, to be honest, that the funding got vetoed. We'll
Yes.
try again next cycle, but we'll see where it goes.
Wow, that it is unfortunate because I believe, I'll speak for myself, this tool is very valuable, and I'd like to do even more research and implement it in some of the things that we do. Um,
Hmm.
eh, Joel, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I was kind of curious on how are you gonna pitch this, or I don't want to say pitch. How are you gonna get this in the hands of the voters? How are you going to make me want to join your organization in this endeavor?
Right. I think that I think that user adoption is going to be critical to the success of this thing. The only way that legislators will really use the results is if they see big numbers, right? If they see that a lot of people in their district are engaging on this, and so I think building trust and outreach, and so a lot of it is that's the work that Sadie is doing, trying to get the word out to other organizations. And I think what we're thinking is that those organizations like you guys and others will be great partners because you have some skin in the game. If you're an
Yeah.
organization that's got a piece of legislation going in front of legislators in Tallahassee, you have an incentive to get your members to get into the app and vote, because the more adoption that I think it just helps with advocacy, your advocacy work around these issues. And so whether you're a right-leaning organization, a left-leaning organization, or a sort of a centrist organization, the Chamber of Commerce or whatever, you have a reason to want to get people actively involved, because then you can go to a legislator and say, hey, look, the people in your district really want you to support this issue,
Right.
and we've got some data to show you that validates that it's not just an opinion from this particular organization. So that's where we're thinking we'll see the growth come, is in organizations who, other nonprofits, or they could be partisan organizations, but they're other organizations that have some business in front of the legislature.
Right.
What appropriations were you grouped into an area where your appropriations got vetoed, or you got vetoed directly?
We
Line
got
item
vetoed
veto.
directly because our funding went through the Secretary of State for the state of Florida, because that's who
Okay.
runs the elections in Florida. So it was, yeah, we weren't really in the arts and culture kind of category that sort of got, there was a broad brush of vetoes in the arts and culture category. we were separate, and so that's why I think it was a bit of a surprise that our funding was specifically targeted. I don't really know. It's hard for me to postulate because we don't know governor's process or the people in his staff who ultimately.
Yeah, I only want to bring that up because some people might think that you were actually in the arts, but if you're not, they'll have a different sympathy for that line item veto.
Right.
I had the idea that this appropriation was in the arts and culture, vetoes, but you just clarified for me, Ramon, that this was standalone through the Secretary of State. So thank you for the clarification. And Joel, I think I know where your line of questioning is going. If I could just jump in, Ramon, we're in the middle of the election cycle. And tomorrow, August 20th, is the primary election day. And so there's always a series of political events that occur leading up to primary day and also election day, like our political hobnobs, mini conventions. And I've seen Sadie at the League of Women Voters meetings before and talked to her and see her promoting Digital Democracy Project. Have you all participated in the various number of hobnobs, for instance?
Yes, well, I think she's done some of those already, and so we've been working with Alianza. They organize some of these hobnobs as well, and so it's hard for us to be at everything because we're a small team and volunteering time for this. But we certainly do try to go out to a lot of these events, set up a table, hand out cards with the QR code so people can download the app and get involved. But the other thing we've been doing is that we've got a lot of candidates who've endorsed the project. And so if you look on our website, you'll see that there's a couple dozen candidates, either sitting legislators or they're challengers trying to challenge an incumbent or fighting for an open seat or whatever the case, where they've endorsed the project saying they want to use this as a tool to hear from voters in their district. So I think that's another, as I talk about outreach and how we're going to get voters on board, I think that's another important avenue, is that if you've got people who are saying, hey, I see this as a way for you to reach out to my office, I'm willing to listen to you and hear your concerns on these issues, and you can use this technology to talk to me. I think that's another great avenue for us to get voters involved.
I agree.
Yes, sometimes those candidates invite us to those events as well to set up a table.
Right, I agree. And Joel probably sees the wheels turning in my head here. There's a couple of initiatives that we are planning for the near future going into 2026, particularly our Leadership Academy, where we are preparing to prepare the next generation of civic leaders. And then also we are preparing our own political experience, which will include a hobnob. And hopefully that will launch in 2026 for the gubernatorial elections. And we'll love to partner with you all starting now into the future and help promote this and get more people onto the platform. I love the idea. I love the idea of the blockchain voting. That's something that we want to incorporate into our plans into the future, as far as the Leadership Academy and also the what is called right now United Voice, our political experience for 2026. Joel, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I really appreciate you explaining this, because Corey Mills, when he first started to run, he wanted a system like this, and it's very specific. He said he wanted to hear from the voters, and it was like he was talking directly to me about your project. So, I mean, there are legislators like Corey that have an idea that they want to listen, and he said he would, if he voted against something that was popular, he would make sure that he clarified why.
Excellent. Oh, I think Ramon froze there.
Right.
Oh, there
Right.
he
And
is.
I would love to have a version of this. Okay. I would love to have a version of this in the future where legislators could, um, post a YouTube video or something directly on the website explaining why they either voted the way they did, or in advance why they think voters in the app should vote one way or the other based on what they know about the legislation. I think that would be a great adaptation of this for future, whether it's an organization who supports a piece of legislation or opposes a piece of legislation, wanted to explain to people why they've taken that stance as an organization, or why they believe that people should know about this aspect of a bill or that aspect of a bill to give them information about supporting their point of view. Same thing for legislators. I would love to have that as a future implementation of this. We've also, I think it's great to hear people like Corey Mills who kind of coming to this consensus. Yeah, it's a 21st century. We should be able to use 21st century tools to have greater access and accountability in our system of government. I think that a lot of what's motivated me personally to get involved with this and do this as a nonprofit, where there's no shareholders and there's no potential for people to try to sell out the organization and to Google or something, but a lot of the motivation is this feeling that I, I personally lost friends in Iraq, and uh, we spent 20 years fighting for freedom for other people in other parts of the world, and the idea that our own, we come back from 20 years of effort, and our own democracy feels like it's on a precipice. I mean, that's terrifying to me. And I would like for us as a society to get back to a system where we can talk to each other and we can have debate and dialogue and build consensus around ideas that bring everybody along, instead of constantly being in our battlegrounds, team red, team blue, throwing spears at each other and nobody being able to have Thanksgiving together anymore. I mean, so I think that our hope is that this type of, we can show people that democracy can still function and we can use 21st century tools to do that. And we also need 21st century type of legislators like Corey Mills and others who want to be more accountable and use these tools to hear from voters in a new and interesting way.
Excellent. Thank you. Ramon, I know we're going a little bit long here. Just one more question from Cedra. Given your extensive experience in both the military and the tech sectors, how do you view the role of leadership in driving digital democracy initiatives?
I do think it's critical because, yes, we're building a technology platform, but ultimately we are building trust. People will not engage in this if they don't trust it. And a lot of that comes to a sense of servant leadership that we have to carry out in our work as an organization, but also partnering with other servant leaders who are sitting legislators or candidates who can show some humility and be willing to be open to the voice of voters rather than being, I guess, fixated on their own points of view.
Sure.
That if we can find those servant leaders who believe in the system more than in themselves, then I think we can be very successful in driving this, because we do have to build trust with the public. We have to bring people back into believing that their government can deliver for them, and that we as a nonprofit organization can help them get the level of accountability and sort of rein in their government that they feel like no longer is responsive to them. So I do think that leadership is critical, because people have to trust that we're not, again, as an organization, we're not going to sell this thing to Google. We have no shareholders who are trying to harvest data and sell
Sure.
it off at a profit. So part of it is the way we structure ourselves as a nonprofit. Part of it is that we build on a foundation of high security, and that part of it is like, working with other organizations to build a coalition of the willing, if you want to use that term. So
Okay.
I do think leadership's key to the entire endeavor. Absolutely.
Excellent. Great. Joel, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I just want to appreciate that you came on and thank you very much.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For having me.
This was very informative, Ramon, and I pray that we are working together in the future. I love everything about the blockchain. Again, we're hoping to implement that in our plans into the future. And again, thank you to Sadie for connecting us, and thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward
Absolutely.
to future endeavors and helping promote Digital Democracy Project. Is there any final words you'd like to leave with our viewers and listeners, and also let them know how to learn more about Digital Democracy Project?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to work with you guys in the future as well. And viewers can go to digitaldemocracyproject.org. We're a nonprofit, so it's .org. And we are not funded by the state, as you heard. So we would be happy to have your donations. We're small dollar donations are keeping the website up and keeping the project going. We all volunteer our time. So if you want to volunteer your time, we need volunteers. If you want to volunteer your money, we need donations. If you want to get on the app, download the app and get involved, and give us your feedback too, because we constantly want to build a better user experience. So we want to hear from people what they like, what they don't like, how we can make it better.
Excellent. We really appreciate it. On behalf of our other host, Joel Hawksley and Cedra in the background there, giving us some questions. Please, everyone, like, share, hit the notification button, please, especially share this valuable information with those individuals that your family, your friends, co-workers, influencers in the community, those politicals, and those elected who could, learn a thing or two. And of course, more importantly, comment. Let us know what you think about today's episode with Ramon Perez and Digital Democracy Project. And please let us know if you're going to download the app. Let us know your experiences. Share it with us and share it with Digital Democracy Project. This is You Can't Make This Shit Up. Ramon, thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you.
it, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.